Is your bathtub drain telling you it's time for a costly replacement? Think again. Today, we're going to look at the problems that make people think they need a new bathtub drain, why most replacements are unnecessary, and the simple fixes that could save you an expensive repair bill. And make sure you stay until the end, because I'll show you the one situation where replacing the drain actually is necessary, and how to know the difference. Have you ever looked at your bathtub drain and thought, I probably need to replace this entire thing? Maybe the drain is slow. Maybe it's stained, rusty, or no longer seals properly. Maybe the stopper stopped working altogether. So you start searching online, and suddenly you're watching videos of people removing drain pipes, cutting plumbing, buying specialty tools, and spending hundreds of dollars on what looks like a major repair. At that point, most homeowners assume one thing: replacing a bathtub drain must be complicated. And in some cases, it can be. But after years of repairing bathroom fixtures and drain systems, I can tell you something surprising. Most people replace a bathtub drain for the wrong reason. In fact, many bathtub drains that homeowners think are bad don't actually need to be replaced at all. The real problem is often something much simpler: a hidden clog, a worn gasket, a stuck stopper, or a buildup that's been quietly causing problems for years. I've seen homeowners spend $200 to $400 replacing perfectly good drain assemblies when a 5-minute fix would have solved the issue. I've seen homeowners spend $200 to $400 replacing perfectly good drain assemblies when a 5-minute fix would have solved the issue. Let's be honest. Most bathtub drains don't look very good after a few years. You start seeing rust stains around the drain, the metal loses its shine, soap scum builds up, the stopper stops working properly, the tube drains slowly. And before long, many homeowners come to the same conclusion: this drain is old. I probably need to replace it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that over the years. In fact, I've walked into bathrooms where the homeowner already had a replacement drain kit sitting on the counter. They were convinced the entire drain assembly had failed. But after a few minutes of inspection, we discovered something surprising. The drain itself was perfectly fine. The real problem was something else entirely. Because most bathtub drain problems fall into one of 4 categories: hair buildup, soap scum, and mineral deposits, a malfunctioning stopper, or a worn rubber gasket. None of those problems automatically require replacing the drain. Yet thousands of homeowners replace perfectly good drain assemblies every year because the symptoms can be incredibly misleading. A slow drain feels like a bad drain. A leaking drain feels like a failed drain. A stopper that won't work makes it seem like the entire assembly is broken. But symptoms and causes are not always the same thing. Think about your car. If the engine light comes on, you don't automatically replace the engine. You diagnose the problem first. The same principle applies to plumbing. And this is where many people end up spending money unnecessarily, because replacing a bathtub drain can be much more complicated than it looks. Some drains haven't been removed in 20 years. Others are seized in place by corrosion. Some require specialty tools. And occasionally, people even damage the tub itself while trying to remove a drain that never needed replacement in the first place. That's why professional plumbers almost always ask one question before recommending replacement: what is the drain actually doing? Because the answer usually points to a much simpler fix. And the most common symptom by far is also one of the easiest problems to solve: a bathtub that drains slowly. If I had to pick one problem that causes more unnecessary bathtub drain replacements than anything else, it would be this: a bathtub that drains slowly. You take a shower. The water begins collecting around your feet. By the time you're finished, you're standing in several inches of water. At first, it's just annoying, but week after week, it gets worse. Eventually, many homeowners look at the drain and assume the entire assembly must be failing. I've heard it countless times. The drain is old. The metal looks bad. I think I need a whole new drain. But here's the surprising truth. The drain itself is usually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The real problem is almost always sitting directly beneath it. Hair. Lots of hair. Every time you shower, strands of hair go down the drain. Most don't make it very far. Instead, they wrap around small imperfections inside the drain and trap soap residue, body oils, and shampoo. Over time, that buildup grows larger and larger. Think of it like a fishing net. At first, it catches a few strands. Then it starts catching everything. Eventually, water can barely squeeze through. The symptoms can feel serious. The tub drains slowly. Water backs up. You begin wondering if the plumbing itself is failing. But many times, the solution isn't replacing the drain. Has something like this happened to you? Tell us in the comments. It's simply removing the blockage. I've pulled out hair clogs the size of small rodents from bathtub drains. And afterward, the bathtub drained like new again. No replacement, no expensive parts, no plumbing modifications. Just a clogged drain doing what clogged drains do. And here's the really frustrating part. Some homeowners replace the entire drain assembly and still have the exact same problem afterward. Why? Because they replaced the symptom, not the cause. The hair clog was still sitting farther down in the pipe. That's why professional plumbers almost always inspect for blockages before recommending replacement, because in many cases, the easiest fix is also the correct one. But slow draining isn't the only symptom that tricks people into replacing perfectly good bathtub drains. The second culprit is something almost everyone mistakes for corrosion or damage, and it's hiding in plain sight. Here's another reason homeowners replace bathtub drains that don't actually need replacing. They look down at the drain and see ugly brown stains, discoloration, or crusty buildup around the metal. Immediately, they think the drain is rusting out. The metal is corroded. This thing is falling apart. And honestly, I understand why. Some of these drains can look terrible. I've seen bathtub drains that appeared to be completely ruined. The metal looked orange. The edges looked corroded. The surface was covered with thick deposits. The homeowner was already shopping for replacement parts. Then we cleaned the drain, and suddenly it looked almost new again. Because what many people think is rust often isn't rust at all. It's mineral buildup, hard water deposits, iron staining, soap scum, years of accumulated residue. Think about your shower door. Over time, it develops a cloudy, crusty film. That doesn't mean the glass is failing. It simply means minerals and residue have built up on the surface. The same thing happens to bathtub drains. By the way, do you need help with another problem? Let us know in the comments. Hard water leaves behind calcium and lime deposits. Iron in the water can create orange or brown stains that look exactly like rust. Soap residue traps dirt and minerals, making everything appear much worse than it actually is. I've had homeowners tell me, this drain looks 20 years old, and after 15 minutes of cleaning, it looked almost brand new. No replacement required. Now, can bathtub drains actually rust? Of course they can, especially older drains made from lower quality metals. But true structural corrosion is much less common than people think. And replacing a drain simply because it looks ugly can lead to unnecessary work and expense. That's why professional plumbers usually ask another question. Is the drain actually failing, or does it just look bad? Because appearance alone can be incredibly misleading. And speaking of misleading symptoms, there's one problem that convinces homeowners they need a new drain more than almost anything else. A stopper that suddenly stops working. This one fools homeowners all the time. One day, the bathtub stopper won't stay closed. Or maybe it won't open. Perhaps it gets stuck halfway. Or the tub slowly drains even though the stopper is in the closed position. Immediately, people assume the entire drain assembly has failed. I've heard it countless times. The drain is broken. I think I need a whole new drain. The mechanism must be bad. But surprisingly often, the drain itself is perfectly fine. The problem is simply the stopper. Remember, the stopper is a moving part. It opens, it closes, it gets stepped on, it gets covered in soap, shampoo, and hair. Over the years, components can loosen, shift, or become clogged with debris. Hair can wrap around the mechanism. Threads can back out. Springs can wear down. Linkages can become misadjusted. And all of these problems can make it seem like the entire drain assembly has failed. I've seen homeowners spend hundreds of dollars replacing perfectly good bathtub drains when the only thing wrong was a stopper that needed a 2-minute adjustment. One customer was convinced her drain had completely failed because the tub wouldn't hold water. She had already purchased a replacement kit. When I arrived, I simply tightened the stopper assembly and removed some hair wrapped underneath it. The entire repair took less than 5 minutes. Her original drain is still working today. That's why professional plumbers rarely recommend replacing the entire drain because of a stopper problem alone. Because in most cases, the stopper is the problem, not the drain. And that's an important distinction. A drain assembly is fixed. The stopper is a moving component designed to be serviced. The good news? Most stopper issues can be repaired or replaced independently. No cutting pipes, no removing plumbing, no major repair bill. But there is one symptom that makes even experienced homeowners nervous. Because when water starts appearing underneath the tub, people immediately assume the drain assembly has failed. And sometimes they're right. But many times, the real culprit is something much simpler. Few things make homeowners panic faster than finding water underneath a bathtub. The moment they see moisture on the floor or stains on the ceiling below, many immediately assume the worst. The drain must be bad. The entire assembly probably needs replacing. And sometimes that's true. But surprisingly often, the drain itself isn't the problem. The real culprit is usually a small rubber gasket. Most bathtub drains rely on a rubber seal underneath the tub to keep water from leaking around the drain body. Over time, that gasket can dry out, compress, crack, or shift slightly out of position. When that happens, water can begin escaping around the drain. The symptoms can look serious: small puddles, water stains, even ceiling damage below the bathroom. And because the leak appears near the drain, homeowners automatically assume the metal drain assembly has failed. But many times, the metal components are perfectly fine. The only issue is a worn seal that costs just a few dollars. I've seen homeowners prepare for major repairs only to discover they needed nothing more than a new gasket and a bit of plumber's putty. The repair took minutes. The savings were hundreds of dollars. This is why professional plumbers rarely recommend replacing an entire drain assembly simply because a leak exists. First, they determine where the water is actually escaping. Is it leaking through the drain body, around the gasket, or somewhere else entirely? Because replacing the wrong part doesn't solve the problem. It simply makes the repair more expensive. After everything we've discussed, you might be wondering, so when do I actually need to replace the drain? Because sometimes replacement really is the right solution, but it's much rarer than most homeowners think. The first sign is severe corrosion, not stains, not mineral buildup. I'm talking about metal that's physically deteriorating, pitting, flaking, cracks, pieces breaking away from the drain body. If the metal itself is failing, replacement becomes the safer long-term option. The second sign is physical damage. I've seen drain flanges crack after someone dropped a heavy object in the tub. I've seen threads stripped from years of over-tightening. And I've seen drain bodies become warped from improper repairs. Once structural damage occurs, cleaning and adjustments usually aren't enough. The third situation is persistent leaking, despite replacing the gasket and resealing the drain. If you've already replaced the seal, reapplied plumber's putty, and confirmed the leak is still coming directly from the drain body itself, replacement may be necessary. And finally, there's multiple failures happening at once. a severely corroded drain, a damaged stopper mechanism, worn threads, recurring leaks. At some point, repairing individual components simply stops making financial sense. But here's the important part. Those situations are the exception, not the rule. After years in plumbing, I can tell you that most bathtub drains people think need replacement don't actually need replacement at all. The symptoms are usually caused by clogs, buildup, stoppers, or worn seals. And that's why diagnosing the problem first can save homeowners hundreds of dollars. Because sometimes the easiest fix is also the correct one. Professional plumbers tend to do one simple thing that most homeowners never think about. Every few weeks, they inspect the drain. That's it. They remove visible hair. They wipe away soap buildup. They check that the stopper is moving freely. And they address small problems before they become big ones. It takes less than a minute, but that one habit can prevent many of the issues we've talked about today. Think about it. Most drain problems don't happen overnight. Hair accumulates slowly. Mineral buildup develops gradually. Gaskets wear out over years. The earlier you catch these problems, the easier and cheaper they are to fix. A few seconds of maintenance can save you from unnecessary repairs, replacement parts, and expensive service calls. So, before you replace your bathtub drain, stop and ask yourself one question. What is the drain actually doing? Is it draining slowly? Is the stopper malfunctioning? Does it simply look dirty or corroded? Or is there true structural damage? Because in many cases, the drain itself isn't the problem. And replacing a perfectly good drain can turn a simple 5-minute fix into an expensive weekend project. Remember, a slow drain usually means a clog. A bad-looking drain usually means buildup. A faulty stopper usually means a simple adjustment. And a leak often means a worn gasket. Only true structural damage usually calls for replacement. Sometimes, the most expensive repair isn't replacing a bad part. It's replacing a good one that never needed to be replaced in the first place. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe for more homeowner plumbing tips. And let me know in the comments, have you ever replaced something in your home, only to discover later that the real problem was something much simpler?